A man is sentenced to death for asking too many questions. His crime? Challenging the system. This is ancient Athens, the so-called birthplace of democracy. But here's the twist. Was it really democracy, or just a clever disguise for the rich and powerful to stay in control? And what about Sparta, the rival city that valued soldiers over philosophers? Or Persia, the empire that stretched across continents, ruled by kings chosen by the gods? Sounds like a blockbuster movie, right? But this is real history. So grab a seat, because we're about to uncover the shocking, messy, and fascinating origins of democracy. Trust me, you'll never look at voting the same way again. Let's dive in. So where did democracy start? Most people say ancient Greece, specifically Athens, in the 5th century BC. But was it really democracy as we know it today? Not exactly. Let's break it down. In Athens, they had this system where people could vote and have a say in how the city was run. Sounds great, right? But here's the catch. Only a small group of people could actually participate. Women? Nope. Slaves? Forget about it. Foreigners? Not a chance. Only free Athenian men who owned property could vote. That's like 10 to 15% of the population. So, was it really ruled by the people? Not quite. Now let's talk about Socrates, the famous philosopher. He wasn't a fan of this system. In 392 BC, he was put on trial for corrupting the youth and not believing in the gods of Athens. The jury found him guilty and sentenced him to drink poison hemlock. Socrates believed that just like a shoemaker needs skills to make shoes, a leader needs skills to govern. He thought Athens' democracy was more about popularity and power than actual competence. And guess what? He paid the ultimate price for speaking his mind. Plato, his student, called him the first victim of democracy. Athens had 3 main social groups: the rich and nobles, craftsmen and traders, and farmers. The rulers were called archons. At first, being an archon was a lifelong job, but over time it became a 1-year position. Even with these changes, the rich and powerful still controlled everything. The poor, they didn't have much of a voice. Here's something shocking. Athens had about 400,000 people, and half of them were slaves. These slaves did all the hard work: building, farming, you name it. Without them, Athens wouldn't have functioned. But they had no rights. Their lives were in the hands of their owners. Another group, called medics, were foreigners living in Athens. They weren't slaves, but they weren't citizens either, so no voting for them. Then there was Solon, a poet and lawmaker who tried to fix things. He divided Athenians into 4 groups based on wealth and made laws to protect poor farmers from being sold into slavery. He also created the Council of 400, where people could vote for archons. This was the first election in history, and it's often called the beginning of democracy. But again, only the free men could vote. Women and slaves were left out. In Athens, young men could go to the agora, the public square, and share their opinions. They could criticize the government, argue with others, and even meet officials. Sounds cool, right? But this freedom was limited to a small group. Athens was divided into 12 tribes, each living in a neighborhood called a deme. These tribes were like big families, and only their male members could participate in politics. Socrates didn't like this system. He thought it was more about manipulation than real leadership. He called it demagoguery, where leaders used charisma and promises to win support, not actual skills or knowledge. He famously said, "If you kill a man like me, you will hurt yourself more than you hurt me." He was talking about the court, but the people of Athens. He believed that by silencing them, they were hurting their own society. Now let's talk about Sparta, Athens' rival. Sparta was a military state. Boys started training as soldiers at the age of 6 and served until they were 30. They couldn't marry before 30 and had to be ready to fight at any moment. Sparta was ruled by 2 kings and a council of elders called the Gerousia. This council decided whether to go to war or not. Unlike Athens, Sparta was all about discipline and order. Aristotle and Plato respected Sparta's system, even comparing it to some modern regimes. The Spartans and Athenians were always at odds. Athens valued philosophy and democracy, while Sparta focused on military strength. Their rivalry shaped ancient Greece, but it also made them vulnerable to outside threats like the Persian Empire. Speaking of Persia, let's head east. The Persian Empire was huge, stretching from the Indus River to Egypt. Under rulers like Darius, they had a federal system. Each region had its own king, but they all answered to the King of Kings. Darius called himself the King of Kings because he ruled over 23 provinces. This system allowed local rulers to have some power while still serving the central government. The Persians had this idea of divine splendor, or far. They believed their king was chosen by the gods and had to be loved by the people. Without this divine approval, no one could rule. It was a mix of religion and politics that kept the empire together. In 480 BC, the Persians attacked Greece. They plundered Athens, destroying much of the city. The Spartans, though, managed to hold their ground. Their military strength saved Greece from being completely conquered. Later, the Romans would adopt many of Sparta's military ideas to build their own empire. The Roman Empire went through 3 stages: kingdom, republic, and empire. During the kingdom stage, powerful families called patricians ruled Rome. The Senate and national parliament supported the king, who believed he was chosen by the gods. But over time, social conflicts and conquests led to the rise of the republic. For the first time, ordinary people had a say in choosing their leaders. This was a big step toward modern democracy. In 313 AD, Emperor Constantine made Christianity the official religion of Rome. This was a smart move to unite the empire against external threats, especially the Sassanid Empire in Persia. Constantine's conversion to Christianity on his deathbed was more about politics than faith. At the time, only about 20% of Romans were Christians, but the religion's structure made it a powerful tool for unity. The Sassanid Empire, on the other hand, had Zoroastrianism as its state religion. The conflict between Rome and Persia became a religious war, with Christianity against Zoroastrianism. This era marked a new chapter in history where religion played a central role in politics and conflict. Now let's fast forward a bit. The Romans are often seen as the first Christian rulers, but they were really opportunistic. They used religion to unite their empire and fight against Persia. The Sassanid Empire, meanwhile, had a centralized government with Zoroastrianism at its core. The wars between these two empires weakened both sides, paving the way for new powers to rise. In the end, the story of democracy is a messy one. It didn't start as a perfect system, and it's still evolving today. From Socrates' criticism to Constantine's political moves, democracy had been shaped by countless events and ideas. It's a reminder that freedom and equality are hard-won and always need protecting. So, what can we learn from all this? Democracy isn't just about voting. It's about fairness, inclusion, and the constant struggle to make sure everyone's voice is heard. The journey of democracy is far from over, and it's up to us to keep pushing for a better, more equal world.